My brother turned my life into a nightmare, and then he went and got my wife pregnant. Now he seeks my assistance after our parents turned their backs on him, leaving me with their $5 million inheritance. My younger brother, Michael, has consistently held a profound grudge against me. If you believe it originated from jealousy, you're mistaken. He was the chosen one, while I was left in the shadows. He had no cause for envy. For some background, our mother always pampered Michael. He was the shining star of our family. She prepared his meals, handled his laundry, and even requested my assistance with his school assignments. I was anticipated to support him solely due to our familial ties, yet I never encountered the same regard in return. I embraced this, as I was rather self-sufficient. Maybe I contributed to the situation by consistently fulfilling his needs without anticipating anything back. He was never there for me in my times of need, only coming around when he had his own agenda. As a reserved and introspective child, I found solace in my studies and preferred solitude, while he was boisterous and unruly, much like our father. I have a tendency to be direct and candid, always presenting things as they are. I think my mother might have formed a less favorable view of me due to my candid nature. This favoritism positioned Michael as the family's favorite. I didn't mind it during our childhood. However, issues arose when he began to bully and ridicule me for not being like him. He would playfully poke fun at my height and the fact that I sported glasses. He would quietly enter my room, peruse my diary, and then go on to express his grievances to my mom regarding my entries. When I raised my voice and expressed my frustrations to our parents about him encroaching on my privacy, they dismissed it with laughter, insisting it wasn't significant. He committed even more terrible acts, such as almost shattering my glasses and contaminating my food with unpleasant substances. He even once added tiny stones to my cereal, but fortunately, I discovered them before they could harm my teeth. When I shared it with my mom, she brushed it off, claiming that this is just how brothers connect. In every argument, Michael would target my vulnerabilities to hurt me. We attended the same school, which meant he was aware of the bullying I faced from a few classmates. Rather than standing by my side, he chose to align himself with the tormentors, hurling insults such as ugly and con kai long la, and even inciting them to cause physical harm, labeling me as nothing more than a Kudabailon. On another occasion, amidst a disagreement over something insignificant that has faded from my memory, he uttered the words for me to end my life. Although I can often dismiss many insults, that particular one struck a chord because I was grappling with my mental health during that period. I'm feeling more at ease now, but it was truly heartbreaking to learn that my own brother wished for my demise. With Dad frequently occupied with work and Mom appearing indifferent, there was even a moment when she reprimanded me, asserting it was my fault for bothering him. Conditions continued to deteriorate. In high school, an astonishing event unfolded when Michael tried to ignite my hair, and incredibly, our mother stood up for him, insisting he was just having fun. Honestly, who acts in such a manner? Fortunately, my father ultimately aligned with my perspective and emphasized the seriousness of the matter. He even threatened to involve the authorities regarding Michael. This moment truly transformed my brother's perspective, as he had never encountered any repercussions for his behavior prior to this. He was truly taken aback, and my dad firmly stated that the time for tolerance had passed, and that Michael must begin to show respect for his older brother. Eventually, my father entered my room for a conversation. I was taken aback by his support, as he frequently remarked to Michael about their similarities, and he was right. Dad confessed that he had spent years waiting, wishing for Michael to grow up, but he was gradually coming to the unsettling conclusion that Michael was turning into quite the bully. Receiving this from my dad felt profoundly affirming, and I nearly succumbed to tears. I revealed all that Michael had put me through over the years, and even brought up the bullying I faced at school. My father was taken aback by the extent of what I had gone through. The following day, he approached the principal to make certain that the bullies were cautioned about the serious repercussions they would face if their behavior persisted. Later that evening, my father signed me up for MMA at the nearby gym, insisting that I needed to toughen up and confront the bullies in my life. I acknowledge that a somewhat geeky individual like myself attempting to learn combat skills may have appeared amusing, yet I was incredibly determined. I effectively organized my schedule to harmonize my academic pursuits with my daily exercise routine, and the MMA classes transformed both my life and my physical appearance. One day, Michael was at it again with his mischievous ways. He took my pocket money, which we earned for assisting with chores. I had been holding on to it for some time. Michael quietly slipped into my room and grabbed it. I intercepted him right before he could ride away with his friends. I insisted he give back my money, but Michael ridiculed me, claiming that all I could do was seek assistance from my father. Something took hold of me, and before I knew it, I had struck him in the face. He was taken aback, stumbled backward, and I swiftly took my money from his pocket before pushing him down again. Michael burst into tears, and it was rather amusing. Nevertheless, my mother hurried outside to assist him and discover what had occurred. Upon discovering that I had confronted him, she expressed her astonishment and admonished me, insisting that I ought to set a more positive example for Michael, who appeared to take pleasure in witnessing my reprimand. My mother expressed her concerns to my dad regarding my behavior, suggesting that I required some guidance. My father sternly requested that we both clarify our actions. I recounted the incident where Michael had taken the money I had diligently earned and saved. In his defense, he claimed he required the funds for a date, insisting that as his brother, I ought to assist him. Nonetheless, Father informed Michael that he was fortunate I merely resorted to a punch for the theft, as anyone else might have opted to involve the authorities. He persisted in explaining to Michael that he had no authority to seize what belonged to others without their permission. Michael was not pleased and reacted with a fit, probably expecting our mother to take his side. Yet Dad stood his ground. Upon coming to the unsettling conclusion that there would be no repercussions for the blow he had received, Michael unleashed a torrent of vitriol, expressing his deep-seated animosity towards me before retreating to the sanctuary of his room, securing the door behind him. After that incident, Michael started to pull away from me. He finally realized that his attempts to intimidate me were futile, and even my dad had ceased to back his behavior. For the first time in ages, it seemed as though we stood on equal ground. Even though he could no longer inflict physical pain, he turned to verbal jabs whenever our parents were absent. As the years passed, his demeanor deteriorated, growing increasingly irritable and quick to anger. Whenever I tried to engage him with a question, he would dismiss me and stroll off, quietly hurling insults like nerd or loser as he went. Whenever he had something to say, he preferred to pass it on through our mother rather than addressing me directly. When I inquired about why Michael couldn't simply communicate with me, she would encourage me to be more empathetic. I was unsure whether it was merely the turbulence of adolescence or something deeper, a true animosity. As time passed, enduring his remarks grew increasingly intolerable, and I yearned to escape and find my own space away from him. I asked my mother multiple times to facilitate a conversation for us to address our issues, but she consistently declined, expressing her desire to remain uninvolved. When I inquired about her thoughts on Michael's treatment of me, she would dismiss the question. Ultimately, I departed from my dream university, having secured a scholarship as a leading student. My father hosted a celebration in my honor, and it was evident that my mother felt a sense of pride as well. Yet, Michael kept his distance, hardly recognizing my accomplishments. Leaving for university was a blend of anticipation for what lay ahead and a sense of liberation from the suffocating atmosphere at home. The initial months at university felt like a breath of fresh air. I forged new friendships, relished my classes, and began to create a life distinct from the stifling environment of my upbringing. The persistent dread of Michael's verbal assaults faded away, granting me a refreshing sense of tranquility. In my second year, I encountered my wife, Karen, at a fraternity gathering through a mutual friend, and we instantly connected. Growing up in a religious environment, having children outside of wedlock was considered unacceptable. Upon learning of her pregnancy in our final year, we made the decision to wed immediately after graduation. Our wedding was an intimate yet delightful celebration. Our parents shared in our joy, and we reveled in the festivities. In that instant, I was convinced that Sarah was my one true love. I have always imagined a committed partnership, a single woman to return to and share my life with. Even with the attention from other women throughout the years, I chose not to engage because I found true satisfaction in my marriage. Sarah was the embodiment of my dreams, and I had no desire to cause her any pain. However, I later discovered two instances of betrayal in our marriage. One involved a sporadic relationship with her married colleague that lasted for several years, while the other was a short-lived encounter with an ex-boyfriend during a trip to see her family. Some may perceive me as naive, and in hindsight, I find it hard to argue against that notion. Whenever we parted ways for a time, I made the decision to forgive my wife. I was determined to provide our child with a stable environment and had faith that we could navigate through these challenges together. The relationship with her colleague occurred during our younger years, and I considered it a result of youthful errors and lack of discernment. For a time, it appeared that circumstances were improving. While complete trust may elude me, I made an effort to push my uncertainties aside, understanding that true forgiveness requires a sincere commitment to beginning anew. 4 years have passed since her second betrayal, and I felt assured in my choice to offer her another opportunity. Sarah appeared to have transformed, and we felt a true sense of joy as we envisioned our family's future. 3 months ago, my world was once again turned upside down when she confessed to a long-term affair and hinted that our son might not be my biological child. Her words hit me with overwhelming force. A whirlwind of shock, betrayal, and disbelief engulfed me. The weight of her confession was difficult for me to grasp. In a fog, I found the words to inquire why she had concealed such an important truth and how she could have committed an act so destructive. Her response was frigid and unfeeling, as though she were removed from the suffering she inflicted. Her ambiguous replies only deepened my curiosity, leaving me with an abundance of questions. It was an unsettling and heart-wrenching experience, facing the broken trust and the doubts surrounding my own family. I persisted in seeking the truth from Karen, driven by the belief that I had a right to know the identity of the father of the child I had nurtured since birth. In the end, she confessed it was Michael. My eyes grew wide with disbelief as I inquired of Sarah what she intended. She shared that she and Michael had formed a friendship after I introduced her to my family, and she spent the time from Thanksgiving to New Year's with us. Michael, who typically kept his distance from me, was unexpectedly warm and courteous to her, which brought me joy as I wished for Sarah to feel at ease. Sarah sought to gain acceptance into my family, dedicating considerable time to my mom whenever she could. She observed the divide between Michael and me and inquired about it. I shared my thoughts on our difficult relationship and conveyed that it may remain beyond repair because of his lingering emotions. Sarah grasped the situation but began inviting Michael to our outings, believing it might strengthen our connection. Every time we set out to enjoy a film, she would extend an invitation to Michael, and we ended up watching whatever he picked. In this moment, Michael and I shared a few words, marking a notable shift from his typical silence. I recall Sarah and Michael spending time together, engrossed in their video games, but it never struck me as anything significant. Sarah shared with me that there was a day when Michael confided in her about his challenges and a recent breakup. In a moment of openness, he initiated a bond with her. She noted that he would innocently flirt with her in my absence, and eventually, the situation spiraled beyond her control. The sight of my wife and brother resting side by side filled me with a sense of unease. Sarah admitted she felt a sense of guilt afterward and chose to leave him, aligning with her sudden choice to return home rather than celebrate New Year's with me. Despite my efforts to persuade her to remain, she was resolute in her decision to depart. Upon our reunion at college following the holidays, she radiated her typical cheerfulness, leaving no room for doubt in my mind. After a fortnight, we discovered she was expecting. Sarah confessed her uncertainty about whether the child belonged to me or Michael. Lacking any means to establish the truth, she decided to remain with me, recognizing that I was the more reliable brother. This is the reason we chose to unite in marriage. My universe seemed to... The child I cherished may not even belong to me. I inquired of Sarah whether she had been sharing her bed with Michael lately, and she gave a slow nod. She disclosed that they had consistently maintained their connection, as their chemistry was unmistakable. They would slip away to hotels, deceiving me with tales of working late. She confessed that many of her business trips were, in reality, intimate escapes with him. I inquired why she chose to marry me when her heart seemed to lie with my brother, and Sarah replied that she didn't want to be the one to end the marriage. She viewed me as an exceptional father to our son and chose to remain. She acknowledged her error and admitted she lost track of when to halt. I expressed to Sarah my appreciation for her honesty, but I made it clear that I would be gathering my things and departing. She began to weep, pleading for forgiveness, anticipating that I would raise my voice at her. Instead, I methodically gathered my clothes. Sarah firmly believed that if I truly cared for her, I needed to stand up for our relationship, acknowledging that every marriage faces its share of challenges. Upon understanding that I was not going to take action, she shifted her approach, expressing that our son would suffer from a divorce and that children ought to be brought up in intact families. I pointed out that I might not even be the father, which only made her cry harder and accuse me of being heartless. It appeared as though she was convinced that nothing could ever drive me to abandon the marriage. Maybe I bear some responsibility for allowing matters to drift in the past. Although I cared for her deeply, it seemed more rooted in the belief that we shared a son and had been partners since our college days. Sarah continued to assert that it wasn't too late to mend our situation, yet I found it hard to trust her words and felt an overwhelming sense of impatience. Trust loomed large, and her words resonated with emptiness. Even if I were to forgive her, the memory of her sleeping with my brother would linger forever. I've always held the view that we should forgive mistakes, as we are all imperfect beings, yet this crossed a line that cannot be overlooked. I walked away, leaving her in tears on the doorstep, and found solace in a hotel room. The following day, I approached my parents and disclosed the entire truth about my wife's relationship with Michael, detailing how they had been clandestinely involved for years. The astonishment etched on their faces was unmistakable. In keeping with her character, my mother first attempted to justify Michael's actions, firmly believing that her son would never harm his own brother. Resolute in my quest for the truth, I requested that my parents hold their tongues while I reached out to Michael in their presence. I urged them to maintain silence, allowing me to surprise Michael and make him think it was an intimate exchange. As Michael picked up the phone, I confronted him regarding the affair. Initially, he strongly rejected the notion, unwilling to acknowledge any accountability. Yet, upon revealing that Sarah had confessed to everything, he began to cast blame her way, labeling her as lacking in character. He asserted that it wasn't his responsibility if women found him appealing, emphasizing that he was the more attractive sibling. I asserted with conviction that I would reveal his true nature to all, as Michael ridiculed me, claiming that no one would take my word over his because he was the favored one. I couldn't help but scoff at his arrogance. I expressed my gratitude for his unintentional revelation, fully aware that our parents had overheard the entire exchange. Michael fell silent, then stammered, attempting to articulate his thoughts and restore his reputation. My mother, clearly taken aback, insisted on an explanation for Michael. He stumbled through a weak effort to explain his actions, pointing fingers at everyone but himself and frantically attempting to cast the blame onto Karen. I observed my mother, who had previously been a shield for her cherished son, now grappling with a blend of disappointment and anger. In that intense moment, I experienced an unusual feeling of justification. For years, I had suffered under Michael's relentless cruelty. The truth had emerged, and the dynamics had shifted. It was Michael who stood vulnerable, his deeds revealed for all to witness. As Michael's words stumbled, my father, typically restrained in his emotions, could not hide his disappointment. He requested that I hand him the phone and started conversing with Michael. Michael, my father started, his tone heavy with disillusionment. Your actions have not only betrayed your brother, but have also betrayed this family as a whole. You engaged in an intimate relationship with your brother's wife and maintained that connection even after their marriage. Your choices carry significant weight and have permanently broken the trust we once shared. I instilled in both of you the importance of family, loyalty, and decency. Your actions today contradict all the lessons I've aimed to impart. He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle into Michael's mind. Your indifference towards your brother's emotions and the disrespect shown towards his marriage are simply intolerable. You not only caused him pain, but also fractured the connections that unite our family. Your mother and I share some responsibility for the person you've turned into, but we can no longer accept this conduct. As of today, you will no longer have access to the college funds I established for you. You will need to find a way to cover your university fees independently. I will also cease to support your way of living. Do you believe that engaging with married women enhances your masculinity? Let's observe how you cope in my absence. During this time, I kept a calm and collected presence. While my first instinct was to yell at Michael, witnessing my dad discipline him felt like the perfect form of justice. I had unveiled his genuine character, and it was evident he had misjudged the repercussions. My mother, in spite of Michael's relentless objections, kept defending him, but my father quickly terminated the call, cutting off Michael's efforts to rationalize his behavior. Later on, my mom came over and embraced me warmly. It had been ages since we experienced a moment like that. Yet within that embrace, there was a silent connection and reassurance amidst the chaos of family life. She expressed her regret for doubting me all this time. At 14, I could never have envisioned this moment, feeling both validated and welcomed by my mother. After that, my father assisted me in locating a competent attorney to handle my divorce from Karen. She and her attorney attempted to play unfairly, seeking alimony due to my higher earnings, but her infidelity significantly worked to my advantage. A paternity test was also carried out, confirming that Michaelis is, without a doubt, the father of the child. The news struck with a profound anguish, surpassing even the heartache of uncovering Karen's betrayal. I was consumed by rage that the child I had cherished and nurtured was not my own. Nevertheless, I chose to remain resilient. Sarah implored me to keep visiting my son, insisting he shouldn't suffer for the circumstances. Yet I found it unbearable to face him. He brought back memories of Michael, and I couldn't stand it. Once my divorce was finalized, a wave of liberation enveloped me as I settled into my own bachelor pad. Living alone felt like a dream, especially since I had married at such a young age and never truly had the opportunity to embrace independence. Nonetheless, my inherent independence enabled me to swiftly embrace my new way of life, and I found great enjoyment in it. 2 weeks ago, my dad reached out to share that he was contemplating a change to his will as he wished to exclude Michael from his inheritance. My dad is remarkably resolute, and once he made the decision to remove Michael from his life, he remained unwavering in that choice. Michael made attempts to connect with our parents, even going so far as to appear at their doorstep, pleading for their forgiveness, yet they turned him away, unwilling to grant him entry. Even my mother, who typically succumbed to Michael's outbursts, appeared to have reached her limit with him, although it must have been the most challenging for her. Michael never reached out to express remorse for his actions, indicating a lack of regret. His frustration stemmed solely from being distanced from our parents. My father mentioned that he intended to bequeath everything to me, making sure that Michael wouldn't challenge it down the line. He would bequeath Michaela mere $1. My eyes widened in disbelief as I realized the immense effort my dad had put in throughout his entire life. The total, factoring in his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance, approached nearly $2 million. The sole stipulation in his will was that if my father were to pass before my mother, she would remain in their home, despite the ownership transferring to me. I felt it was important to be there for my mom during her final days. Somehow, Michael discovered this and, unable to contact our parents, reached out to me yesterday, attempting to reconcile. He shared his challenges with college, mentioning that after Sarah found out about the child's paternity, she had been persistently asking him for child support. He mentioned that he was broke and was searching for part-time work, yet he couldn't come across any opportunities. He implored me to reach out to our family for a new beginning, as he genuinely required my assistance. I chuckled at him and declared that I was finished with him. I pointed out that he ought to have considered the repercussions before becoming intimate with my wife and causing her pregnancy. Michael contended that I was being unjust and that Sarah shared some responsibility, a point with which I concurred. I pointed out that I had ended my marriage with her, so she was now his responsibility. He has no right to call me to voice his complaints about her or the child, as these are the results of his own choices. Michael began to elevate his tone, but I cut in, reminding him that he was no longer the cherished one in the family, but rather the outcast who had been involved with his own brother's wife. In that moment, Michael's tears flowed as he shared how everyone, even our grandparents and relatives, had turned their backs on him. Although this was accurate, it had ceased to be my concern. I informed him that our relationship was over and that he should refrain from contacting me again, as I no longer viewed him as my brother. Since that moment, I've revisited the dialogue in my thoughts. Even though I loathe my brother, I had never witnessed him cry, at least not since our childhood days. I won't deceive you. It pained me somewhat to witness his vulnerability. I'm wondering if I should bring him up to our parents or if it would be wrong not to. Update 1. Hello everyone. I've received numerous inquiries about my lack of communication with my son Henry, and some have gone so far as to label me as cruel. I must clarify that I feel uneasy about the idea of raising someone else's child. This isn't a situation involving a stepson. I was under the impression that Liam was my son, only to later find out that he is, in fact, my brother Michael's son. This revelation struck a profound chord within me, leaving me in tears for days on end. The primary reason I wish to sever ties with Liam is that I no longer desire Karen's presence in my life. If I stay linked to her child, she will inevitably seek to weave herself back into my life, and I require my own space. You might perceive me as harsh or self-centered, but the truth is, I can't bear to see him again, at least not for quite some time. Update: too many of you accurately deduced that it was my mother who notified Michael about my dad altering his will, prompting Michael to reach out to me as a final attempt to resolve the situation. I faced her in front of my dad, and she crumbled, insisting that I had disciplined Michael sufficiently and that he had grasped his lesson. My father made it clear to my mother that if she thought Michael's actions were excusable, he could no longer remain in their marriage, as he could never come to terms with such a betrayal. This menace hushed my mother. My father was unequivocal. If she ever spoke to Michael again, and we discovered it, she would need to gather her things and go. As I noted, my father is quite obstinate. I hope my mother will take the opportunity to grow from her past errors. Update 3 Reddit. It's been 5 months since my previous update. In recent months, the dynamics with my parents have seen a positive shift. Every weekend, my dad and I hit the golf course together, and he treats me more like a friend than a son. Even though my mother feels the absence of Michael, she has chosen to keep her distance from him. The most recent update I received about Michael came from my cousin, who mentioned that Michael had been soliciting money from everyone and ultimately had to leave college due to financial constraints. He and Sarah share a home, and he works part-time as a mechanic. It seems they are co-parenting Henry, which I suppose is a positive development. Michael is a topic that remains unspoken between my parents and me. Neither of us initiates the conversation. To all those inquiring, I'm doing quite well. 2 months ago, I received a promotion at work, leading to a notable increase in my salary. I haven't been seeing anyone because I believe I still require time and space to heal. I've started attending therapy, so I'm curious to see how it unfolds. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so and tap the notification bell to stay informed about more astonishing real-life stories unfolding around you.